Every city has them. Buildings you walk past 1,000 times, but never truly see. They're just part of the urban landscape, sandwiched between a bank and a boarded-up grocery store, silent and anonymous. This one had no name, no fancy sign, just a set of tarnished brass numbers on a heavy wooden door. I moved in because it was cheap. Looking back, it was too cheap, a fact that should have set off every alarm bell in my head. During the signing, the rental agent couldn't seem to meet my eyes, his gaze constantly shifting from the paperwork to the corner of the room. The building's caretaker, a man who looked as old as the foundation, spoke in clipped sentences and seemed to patrol the halls with a silent, almost mournful watchfulness. But the building itself, it was immaculate. Not a scuff mark on the polished floors, not a speck of dust on the windowsills. It was perfectly clean. Too clean. It felt less lived in, and more like a museum exhibit waiting for its first visitor. I lived on the 8th floor, or at least, that's what my lease said, and that's what I thought for the first few days. The first sign that something was deeply wrong was the elevator. It was an old caged lift with a modern touch panel inside, but there were no labels, no braille, no designated buttons. Just a smooth black surface where numbers would light up when you pressed the corresponding spot. 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 8. Nothing seemed particularly strange about it. At least, not at first. The quiet didn't last. The knocking started on the 3rd night. I remember the exact time because the sudden noise jolted me awake, and my eyes flew to the glowing red numbers on my alarm clock. To 17 a.m. It wasn't an aggressive sound. It was 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Polite, patient, as if someone was sure I was home and was simply waiting for me to answer. I didn't move. I held my breath, listening to the silence that followed, telling myself it was a neighbor who'd had too much to drink and forgotten their floor. The 4th night, it happened again. 2:17 a.m. The 17 a.m. on the dot. 3 slow knocks echoed in my small apartment. But this time, a voice followed, muffled by the thick wood of the door. Sorry, wrong floor. The voice was calm, almost apologetic. It sounded completely normal, human. A wave of relief washed over me. Just a simple mistake. I rolled over and tried to go back to sleep, but an unsettling feeling lingered. The next morning, driven by a nagging curiosity, I sought out the caretaker. I found him polishing the already gleaming brass handles of the main entrance. I asked him, trying to sound casual, how many floors the building had. He stopped polishing and turned to face me. He stared, his eyes unblinking, for a long, uncomfortable moment. Finally, he spoke. His voice a low rasp. 7. I laughed, a little nervously. That's funny, I said. My lease says the 8th floor. I live on 8. His faint, polite smile vanished instantly. His face became a stony mask. There is no 8th floor, he said, his voice flat and final. He then turned his back to me and resumed his polishing, the conversation clearly over. My heart started to pound. Was this some kind of sick joke? That night, my hands trembling slightly, I stepped into the elevator. I scanned the smooth black panel where the numbers appeared. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The space where the number 8 had been just the day before was now blank, unresponsive to my touch. As I stood there, confused and unnerved, a new number flickered into existence for a single, fleeting second. 9. Before I could process what I was seeing, or even try to press the button for a lower floor, the elevator jolted into motion. It moved upwards, climbing past the 7th floor, past the empty space where my apartment on the 8th floor should have been. The ancient machinery groaned as it ascended into a part of the building that, according to the caretaker, did not exist. With a soft ding, the door slid open. I was met with a hallway I had never seen before. The air was cold and musty, and the light from the dim, flickering fixtures barely illuminated the worn, faded carpet. But it was the walls that made my blood run cold. They were covered in framed photographs, docents of Tem. and they were all of me. There I was, sleeping in my bed. The picture taken from the foot of it. There I was, walking down the street, captured from an upper window. There I was, standing right in front of my own apartment door, key in hand, looking tired after a long day at work. My private moments, all displayed like trophies. One photo in particular made me feel sick to my stomach. It showed me inside my room, looking out the peephole of my front door. The picture was taken from the other side, from inside the room with me. At the far end of the hallway, there was an open doorway. There was no door, just an empty frame, and carved into the wall just above it were the words, "This floor was never built." As I stood there, paralyzed by a terror so profound it felt like ice in my veins, I felt a sudden cold breath on the back of my neck. A whisper, soft and close, touched my ear. "You noticed?" The voice was calm, the same one I'd heard through my door. "That's why you're here." The next morning, the police were called by the caretaker, who hadn't seen me. They found my apartment on the 8th floor. It was empty, completely barren, as if no one had ever lived there. There were no signs of a struggle, no belongings left behind. A missing person report was never filed, because officially, apartment 8A never had a tenant. Officially, no one ever lived on the 8th floor. The building remains, standing silently between the bank and the closed grocery store. And sometimes, new residents on the 7th floor complain about a strange noise in the middle of the night. It always comes at 2:17 a.m. A series of 3 slow, polite knocks from the ceiling above. And if they're brave enough, or foolish enough, to call out and ask who it is, a calm voice sometimes answers from the empty space above them. It says, "I'm already inside." Some floors don't exist on any blueprint. They aren't made of concrete and steel. But once you notice them, they notice you back. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more chills. Stay safe out there.